Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the first session of our Startup Spotlight series with Flip.AI. My name is Anna. I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenter to answer live. Our session is being recorded. It'll be available to view on demand within 24 to 48 hours. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our presenter for today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gabriela de Queiroz, and I am a director of AI here in the beautiful San Francisco. And I want to show, Anna, if you can share my first slide. I'm excited to be kicking off the first episode of this live series, Startup Spotlight, where I'll be chatting with founders from top AI startups doing innovative work. We'll talk about their company, their products, the technology behind, use cases, customer stories, and of course, how Microsoft has been helping them in their journey. We'll go live every other Thursday here in this channel at Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. We already have a lineup of the next startups that will be in the show, and I'm working on inviting other startups as we speak. So make sure to use this AKA link to register, and you get a calendar invite and a notification for the upcoming episodes. During this conversation, you can ask questions. You can have the chat, ask your questions, and then I'll be selecting some of them to be answered live. And before we start, I want to make sure that you know one of the most amazing programs that we have here at Microsoft. We offer credits, free credits, and we all love free credits. And we offer startups no matter where you are in the journey. If you just have an idea, if you're already a startup with MVP or already in the market, but you are ready to build, you can apply for this program. And you get up to $150 in Azure credits that can be used in our latest products or different Gen AI models like the models from OpenAI. You can use the credits toward that. You also get access for free to 30 plus tools and services that help your startup grow and scale. And on top of that, you get free one-on-one sessions with Microsoft experts to work through technical and business challenges that you might have. Very excited for the first episode. And today I have Corey Harrison, CEO and co-founder of Flip.AI. Welcome, Corey, to the show.
Hi, Gabriela. Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to have you in the first episode of this series with Flip.AI. And I always like to start, of course, you introducing yourself. Who is Corey? Let the audience know a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And thanks again for having me. Thanks for Microsoft Reactor for having us. And thanks, Microsoft, for the broader partnership that we have. So yeah, I'm Corey Harrison, co-founder and CEO here at Flip.AI. I love what I do. I've spent over 20 years of my career working mostly in enterprise technology and operations. I went to Lehigh University, which is based in Pennsylvania, and got a degree in information systems. I have an MBA from Yale and a master's of technology and leadership from Duquesne University. And yeah, my career is I'm really focused on solving big technology and operations problems for enterprises. Whether that be working for companies like Johnson & Johnson early on in my career, where I sharpened my toolkit around things like Six Sigma and very large enterprise deployments. Whether that be after getting an MBA at Yale and spending time on Wall Street and trying to understand investment banking and fundraising, things that would be very critical for founders. Working for a founder myself at a company called iCIMS, which does HR software in New Jersey. And then, yeah, even having short stints in places like the White House, where I worked for the Secretary of Defense, Ash Carter, have a medal for my service in the Pentagon and building an innovation team there. Or my most recent role at the National Football League, where I helped run operations for the commissioner and helped the league put on probably the best season ever, in my opinion. I'm biased, of course, but the season that we played during COVID, et cetera. So love what I do. We're a small but mighty team here at Flip.AI, and we're very fortunate to have this opportunity to work together, have the investors that we have that back us, and also work with some of the best customers in the world.
Awesome. And then like talk a little bit like, you have this very interesting background, and I love the NFL piece because it's very different from what you did before. And then you founded Flip.AI about 3.5 years ago. Like how big, or like how big is the team right now? And what do you have? Like you have like engineers, how is the distribution on the team? Because founders, they are always interested in like, what is the distribution, how big or small the team is. And the company has been around for a little bit over 3 years, but I think it came out of stealth maybe a year ago.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So we came out of stealth about a year ago. So my co-founder Sunil, Deep, and I. So Sunil used to run Amazon Comprehend, which is the largest NLP service in the world when he was there. Deep was a former director of product at AWS, and the three of us, quote unquote, quit our jobs about a little over 3 years ago. We've been working on this specific use case for about 2 years. And yeah, there's a lot that we've had to learn throughout the throughout that journey. But we officially came out of stealth about a year and a half ago. We came out of stealth November of 2023. If I'm getting my 2023, which is quite an accomplishment, and we were really excited about that. We've intentionally kept our team small but mighty. So we're about 24 folks right now. We'll go to 36 by the end of the year, maybe 40 or so. And yeah, most of those folks are engineers. So there are only 2 people at Flip that aren't developers, me and my chief of staff, Benji.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And I love to talk about like size and where the startup is. Before working for big tech companies, I work for startups, and I work with startups at Microsoft. I work with startups every day, and it's very interesting to see like how the teams are distributed and what they are doing. I love to talk about this. So then Flip.AI was founded. Can you talk a little bit about Flip.AI? What you are trying to accomplish? What are the challenges? And what you were seeing in the market? And then you decided, oh, we should be doing this because there is a gap. No one is doing this. Can you walk us through a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a few slides I can use to frame this up, and I also have the show demo. So for us, give me 1 second. I think I'm sharing. Boom. Okay. Yeah. So we had talked about our team. So we're about 25 folks, right? Globally, we're split mostly between the Bay Area and also Bangalore, India. So we have about half our team is in India. And yeah, so the problem we're solving, we're the first what we call Gen AI native observability. In other words, if you're a developer that's running, if you're running a production environment like we have, I've run quite a few environments myself. My co-founder Sunil used to debug a lot of environments himself, right? He actually used to carry a pager, believe it or not, when those things were real. Yeah, so if you've ever had an issue or an incident, it's really hard to debug these types of things, especially in very large enterprises. Typically what happens is you have to query multiple systems. So you might have logs in one system, you might have tracing enabled in another system, you might have metrics in another system or platform, and you're trying to, each of those platforms has their own query language, their own quirks. Sometimes data's on different teams, right? And you're trying to, as a team, you're trying the best that you can to solve this problem as quickly as you can, right? And before Flip, this was a manual process where you had to query Splunk or query Datadog. You're trying to correlate this data together. Maybe you and your team are on a crash channel in Slack, or maybe there's a bridge that you all are on while you're trying to figure this stuff out. Our models automate that entire process now. And we did that because we have had large scale incidents at companies that we worked at, right? So I worked at the National Football League. I worked in the Pentagon and White House. When I was in the Pentagon, we had several systems that are mission critical, both for service members and their families. And any interruption in those systems, even if there's a slight degradation in performance, could have significant impacts on folks, right? While most of us here have bank accounts, right? If the bank, if you can't access, your banking application to complete a transaction, that's a problem, right? If you are trying to get a ride share, right, and you're trying to book a ride and it's spinning and spinning and there's latency, right? Or it's football season. I used to work at NFL, right? So it's football season. If you're watching playoffs this weekend, or if you're watching the cricket playoffs and the stream goes down, that's a problem, right? So we started Flip because we believed that we can use Gen AI to build specific models that would correlate this data and give you a root cause in seconds, right? So the whole idea is having models that are smart enough in logs, metrics, traces, code, configuration files, such that they can read these files, they can make sense of them, and if something goes wrong, they can tell you what's going wrong in seconds. Seconds compared to, it may take one of my customers an hour, it may take them 93 minutes, 92 minutes. We can give you the kind of analysis that takes hours in seconds. And that's what Flip is about. If you take a step back and you look at most enterprises, downtime and poor performance has a real impact, right? If mean time to resolve incidents is going up, the cost of downtime is going up, the cost of observability tools is going up, right? Most of the CIOs that I meet are, under their cloud costs, observability costs, or the cost for these tools is probably the second or third line right under cloud costs. And also customer expectations are going up, right? So customers are expecting high performing applications. They don't want to see things go down, right? They don't want to have poor performance, et cetera. And at the same time, you have enterprise technology budgets being reduced, right? So there's almost, it's like perfect storm of opportunity for someone to come in here and to help enterprises and help their customers. And for us, like, the bottom line is, for most incidents that we've seen as a team and most incidents that my customers see, it looks a little bit like what you see on the left, right? And if you're a developer here, you probably experience this. You may have basic alerting in one tool. You might have traces in another tool. I mentioned you might have logs in a separate tool. If you're cloud native, maybe you're using CloudWatch logs or something like that, or Azure monitors, right, to monitor and log your cloud infrastructure performance. Or in some cases, you might need to look into like the actual raw logs that developers have written. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. So that's a manual process, right? So you imagine with Flip, what we do is we integrate to all those data sources in read-only mode. You tell us, hey, Flip, I want you to, anytime you have an alert from this tool, or anytime there's a breach of this KPI, I want you to do the kind of analysis that I'll show you in a demo. I mean, we'll do that, and it typically takes about a minute or two. One CTO, when we first started doing discovery on this, and this came out when we came out of stealth, is people call us almost like the holy grail of observability, right? So this is what AI was supposed to do for this space a decade ago. In other words, the first generation of AI, it was called AIOps, and they were largely rules-based tools, and you basically had to maintain very kind of rigid rule sets. You had to feed the models very clean, annotated data, and they were really good at alert deduplication, right? I would argue that, yes, while if I get 1 million alerts, if you can cut that down to 100,000 alerts, yeah, that's helpful. But what I really need to do is, I really need you to go that last mile and tell me the root cause of this incident. And better yet, if you could tell me the root cause of this incident, and eventually if you could start predicting incidents and then resolving incidents on your own, that's even better. That's why we built Flip. And that's why people call us the holy grail, because we are pursuing this promise and delivering this promise that was largely meant to be delivered by the first generation of AI, specifically around developer operations. From a product standpoint, what I'll show you in a demo is, I have maybe 1 or 2 slides before I demo, but I'll show you. So the question is, what's the best product manifestation of this, right? If you are a large enterprise and I showed up and said, hey, we need you to shut down your Splunk instance tomorrow, you would laugh me out of your office, right? That would never happen, right? So what we thought as a startup was, hey, why don't we meet customers where they are? And one way we meet customers where they are is by integrating directly into any observability data source. It could be a commercial off-the-shelf tool, a popular tool like a Datadog or a Splunk. It could be Azure monitors. It could be PagerDuty, Prometheus, right? Open source. Our models can connect to any observability data source. And we just do that through simple API connections. We take read-only access. So we're not writing anything. So everything is done with the utmost security and data governance. But we take read-only connections and we layer in on top of your existing tools. And once we get layered in on top of your existing tools, the models will rationalize through metrics, logs, traces from any data source, the same way a human would. So our models are multimodal. They're a 34 billion parameter mixture of experts model. I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a second, but we built them on our own, and they're specifically built for this use case. And once deployed, our models can Today, they can diagnose or find a root cause to a complex production incident. And I'll show you a few examples, and the models go in a good amount of depth. We're also in private beta. We'll also have our model starting to predict incidents, which is pretty cool. And then last but not least, I think one of the things that was important for us, especially given our backgrounds and my background at the enterprise, just making sure we had the right data governance, right? We were SOC 2 certified before we even came out of stealth. Our models can go on premise, right? So our models can operate completely autonomously and in a customer's environment in any cloud. We've deployed on most of the hyperscaler clouds already. Our models are read-only, right? And our models, excuse me. Models are about 34 billion parameters, and they are specifically trained for this purpose. One of the things that we learned early on was that the general purpose models were cool for showing demos on Twitter or maybe on LinkedIn. But to get to the type of analysis and the depth of the root cause analysis and the complexity of our customers, we needed to build our own models, right? So we've been building our models for about 2 years, and we train them on over 100 billion tokens of data. That data is a mixture of we're startups, so we're scrappy. So early on, it was like data that was available in the open source domain. Over the past, I would say, past 18 months, closer to 2 years, it's more so, and we have a paper on this. It's more focused on data that we're curating on our own. So we've created our own training environment. You can find more information about this. We released a paper around this time last year. We have our own training environment, and we train our model. We call it the Chaos Gym. It's where our models go to train on different data modalities, logs, metrics, and traces. And if you're not familiar with those data modalities, logs are almost like a natural language. It's kind of like developer shorthand. Traces, that's graph data, right? Metrics is time series data, right? So these are different modalities of data that need to come together and operate under one roof. So one of the challenges that we had to face as a startup was, how do we do that well, right? How do we do that well? How do we do that in depth for an enterprise like one of the top banks in the world, or one of the largest digital banks in the world, one of the largest ERP providers in the world? How do we get to that level of detail and train our models to do that? And then also the other part of that was like, and how do we deploy these models on-prem, right? So then that's why you see our models are about 34 billion parameters in size, et cetera. So there's a lot under the hood. And it's really built with enterprises and regulated industries in mind. Those aren't our only customers, but our thought was that, hey, if we can service the largest digital bank in the world, we could probably service all the other digital banks, right? If we could service one of the largest media companies in the world, we can go after other media companies. So I say that to say, if there are startup founders here, definitely encourage you to take a look, because we can probably solve a lot of your problems as well. A couple of things I'll call out on the models, and then I'll kick over to a demo. Our models are deployed in single tenant mode, so your model is your model. We don't mix customer data. This is also very important to us. We aren't installing a bunch of agents in your environment, right? Like not in a traditional sense. I mentioned us requiring read-only access to data. That's very important, because we don't want to write in anyone's in production environment. I mean, these are some of the best customers in the world, best companies in the world at what they do. We don't want to be there hogging up a lot of resources. The data also stays within the boundaries that are set by the enterprise. So that's also something that's important. And again, I keep mentioning this, but it's really believe in this. We don't use one customer's data to train models for other customers. We just don't do that. From a data processing standpoint, we don't store or copy customers' data. That's another challenge in our space. One of the questions that we get, there are quite a few companies that are competing to store your logs, store your metrics, and store your traces, right? We're not that. You can store your data anywhere you want, right? We think that storage is a commodity, candidly. And we encourage customers to put their data wherever they like, and we can just query it. As long as we can query it and get API access, we're all set. And there are a couple other, just kind of like whether it's authentication, SSO, or just having like auditability, a couple of the best practices that we had from day one. We've been pretty consistent and insistent about this. And yeah, how Flip works, and what we'll show you in the demo is basically what we've done is we will hook up to, and again in read-only mode, any observability data source, right? It could be commercial off-the-shelf tools. And we have a few logos here. We can't fit all the logos on the slide, right? But any data source could be commercial off the shelf, could be open source, could be cloud or CMDB data, ticket and alerting as well. So once we have read-only access, we just take simple API keys. You could think of us as a user, almost like a developer. Once we have read-only access, you tell us what signals, you as a customer tell us what signals you care about the most. You may want us to, every time there's an alert that comes from this particular service or application, you might want us to debug that alert. If there is a business KPI, maybe there's a drop in payments, right? That you want us to take a look at. So everything's customizable for customers. And once the customer tells us what kinds of alerts and signals they want us to use to invoke our models, the models will do their job, right? So I'll just pivot over to a quick demo, and we'll show you a very simple example. So this is our demo environment, and everything I'm showing you is going to be powered by our models. So our models are, again, trained on over 100 billion tokens of training data, logs, metrics, traces, and they're multimodal. So our models know how to, if you could think about if we were, Gabriela, if it was me, Gabriela, and like a couple of us in a room, and there was an incident, we would all be experts at something. Maybe I'm the Kubernetes expert. Gabriela is like the expert on Azure. Maybe there's an expert on Prometheus metrics, right? And we would sit in a room, or we'd be on a Slack, or we'd be on a Teams call, or on a phone in some cases, and we'd be trying to figure out what the problem is. We'd have a thesis. We would also have our own views on which of our respective areas are contributing to the potential issue at the time. And we would be querying systems to try to figure this stuff out. We'd share data, and Gabrielle would take a look at it, I'd take a look at it, you would take a look at it, right? And we would try to get to the answers as quickly as possible. That's exactly what our models do. So I'll show you a couple examples. One example here is we call this service health intelligence. So let's just say that there's nothing wrong with your environment at all. Or at least you don't know if there's anything wrong. You just want to see how your service is doing. So what we can do is that we can have our users come in, and they can pick a service, and they can pick a time block. And what they can do is they can ask Flip just to query that service and the time frame is specified. And what Flip is doing is it will query hundreds, thousands of metrics, whatever's available. And it will start to do is it'll start to highlight the metrics that are correlated, right? And as I scroll down here, this is an application environment, and models are just querying Prometheus to see what metrics are correlated and trying to identify potential incidents, right? So in this case, there's a potential incident here, there's a potential incident here, and the models are correlating for those potential incidents, like the most relevant metrics at the time, right? And I'll just keep scrolling down, because what the model does is, as it's querying, it starts to provide its analysis, right? And it's almost akin to me coming in and looking through my systems and saying, hey, something's off. Here's what I see, right? And the models will do this for you on the fly. Very simple example. But another example, and this is most of the developers here, probably, especially if you're in DevOps or an SRE or site reliability engineer, SRE. If you're a site reliability, you've probably run into a 5XX error. What I'm going to show you here is a banking application that is in our environment. It's very similar to Zelle. It's an open source application that we use. And what we've done is we have it sitting in a Kubernetes cluster. And this one is in AWS. We have application logs going to Splunk. I believe traces are in Elastic. We basically send the models a page in this instance. And the page is very simple. So on the left-hand side, it just says, hey, there are 5XX errors. Here are 2 logs, right? That's the reality of most developers, right? You get this page and you're like, hey, something's off. Here are 2 logs. And it's like, good luck. The good news is that our models have been trained on over 100 billion tokens of data. So they've seen hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of 5XX errors, 4XX errors, database issues, Kubernetes issues. The models are really good at debugging distributed microservices. And I'm not talking about 5 or 6 microservices. Some of our customers have hundreds and thousands of microservices in their environments, right? So the good news is that our model, through our training environment, which is called our Chaos Gym, through our Chaos Gym, our models have trained on debugging 5XX errors more than any single developer possibly could, any team of developers possibly could. So what the model does is it reads this alert, and similar to a developer, it comes up with its own runbook, but it's going to come up with its own runbook on the fly and execute it. I'll skip over the root cause for a second because I want to show you how we got there. So the first thing the model does is the model starts to graph out a rel graph, right? So it's just trying to understand request errors and latency. And it's just trying to understand like how bad is this? And the most important thing is the chain of evidence. So this is the actual runbook that the model is going to execute on its own. So one of the things that we thought was really important for our customers was explainability. Flip is not a black box. We don't give you a root cause and say trust us. So every single step that the model takes, to every query that the models run, the most relevant queries that the models run, sample of data, you will see the model's rationale in this chain of evidence. So I'll walk you through that really quickly at a very high level, but this is a very simple example. So first thing the model does is the model, and this will be the same thing any human would do. If we got that alert, I would say, okay, how bad is it? what time frame, right? And the model does it. So the model in this case writes its own query to AWS CloudWatch logs. And by the way, these are all dynamic queries. The model writes its own query. It looks through the logs and says, okay, I got a little bit more specificity around time. These errors start to spike around 420 to 425. That's the model's analysis at that point. Not the answer, but we have time established. Now that we have time established, the models take another look in for that time frame, and it says, hey, I'm going to write another query to CloudWatch logs. It looks through the logs, and what it's trying to do here is it's trying to understand the percentage of errors that is attributed to these two URIs. So this is a payments application. So there's a deposit URI and there's a payments URI. In this case, the model writes its query and says, okay, deposits are probably throwing off about 60% of these issues, payments about 40%. So we have time and we have basically the saturation and the contribution of issues here. The next step the model does is the model writes its own Splunk query. These are dynamic queries, by the way. So the model runs its own Splunk query, takes a look through the logs for those two URIs and says, hey, actually there's potential issues with these two containers. And by the way, you'll see at every single step, what the model does is it'll show you its query. It'll show you a sample of the data that's taken a look at. It'll show you some sort of graphical visualization for the user. And it's going to give you basically its observation at that stage. So the model's observation at this stage is, hey, there may be issues with these two containers. So the model, the same way human would, keeps working on the problem, right? It takes another look at the containers, writes another query to Splunk, says, actually, you know what? These containers are fine, right? And it knows as part of its runbook, since it's kind of hit the container, it's going down to the container level, seems there's not issues there. It knows to pivot back to network logs. In this case, it writes another query to CloudWatch logs again, and it says, hey, this is jitter, right? This is network jitter. And we know this because like we actually injected this particular application with network jitter as part of our testing of the models. So about 5 steps here. The model gives you, again, like every step, the model is going to show you the runbook that's running. It's dynamic. It's going to write its own queries. It's going to analyze data. It's going to give you some sort of visualization. And at every single step, it's going to tell you what it thinks, right, as it continues to work on a problem until it gets to the root cause. If you're in a jam, you could just read the root cause, and we could put this into your Teams channel. We could put this wherever you'd like, right? But I wanted to show you how the model got to this. And we provide this for every single RCA we do, right? So I would say every developer probably doesn't read and kind of review the analysis as much as I showed you just now, but we provide it anyway, just in case. And we can put this root cause analysis. This is our web app in our demo environment. We can put this in a Teams channel. We can use this to update a Jira ticket, a PagerDuty. We can put this wherever you'd like. So the whole thinking is that the model can read an alert, right, or read a prompt, come up with its own runbook or hypothesis, execute that runbook, in other words, query and correlate the data to get to the answer, and show the user the entire path as to how it got there and the root cause in less than a minute. And the model is able to do this in about 54 seconds. It usually takes me way longer to explain it in a demo than that's for the model to actually do it. Really quickly, a couple of things I'll cover before we move to other topics or some of the challenges that we faced. Just deployment, right? So one of the things we have to figure out was deployment. You know, we're all about meeting enterprises exactly where they are. So we have customers that have a mix of SaaS deployments and on-premise deployments. So on the SaaS side, as I mentioned, we do single tenant deployments. So your model is your model, your environment is your environment. We just set up on our side. We are cloud agnostic. We can work in multiple environments. We do work in multiple environments. We don't replicate data, as I mentioned before. If you're on-premise, I mean in your cloud, right? We can do it in your Azure cloud, right? We have deployed on Azure cloud before. With respect to GPUs, you know, we don't require a whole fleet of GPUs or anything like that. And we can run on about 2 GPUs or a few CPUs, depending on the type that you have there. But this is all designed to have as minimal of a footprint as possible. And the models come as pre-trained as we can get them without having seen any of your data. And they're able to generate pretty accurate results. Some of our customers are some of the largest customers and some of the largest companies and some of the best in the world at what they do. And we've been able to get their confidence and help them to resolve some incidents, reduce mean time to resolve, and generate and help them protect revenue. With respect to target demographic, most of our customers, this is not all, but most of our customers, we're typically selling into and talking to developers, right? People who are whether enterprise DevOps, SREs, or in some cases, some infrastructure teams. So far, our customers have been mostly in and around financial services, media, e-commerce, and B2B SaaS. Our models don't do everything today, right? So we don't debug mainframes today, right? We'll promise that. We had to start somewhere. We're a startup. So the models are really, really good at debugging distributed microservices, interior web applications. We have a lot of work around asynchronous event queues, things like Kafka, et cetera, right? And most of our customers tend to have, I would say a couple of observability tools in place. One of our customers did not have any observability tools, and we did a POC on top of just raw data in that case. But most of our customers are going to have a mix of some of the popular observability tools out there. And again, we just need read-only access. We can correlate data pretty easily for them. With respect to getting started with Flip, it's pretty simple. Our POC process, we tend to sell to medium to large size enterprises, although we will have some offerings for individual developers later this year. But we're really customer centric. We are really about reducing friction, and that's why you see us. We train our models the way that we do. That's why we deploy the way that we do. That's why we only need read-only access mode. So it's pretty simple to get up and running. You could just go to www.flip.ai and /get started, and we can schedule a demo for anyone on your team. I'll pause there, Gabriela. Maybe I'll stop sharing my screen for a second, and we can pivot to maybe challenges.
Yeah, and I have some questions because this is just like amazing. I remember getting in the room with a bunch of engineers and trying to figure out all the logs, all these different logs, and then we would do like the 5 whys to get into the root cause of the problem. So why the system went down? Oh, because of this. And then why So we would go this for hours before getting close to the problem. And sometimes it would take hours, sometimes it would take days, and we would not know the root cause of the problem. And I'm talking about like small companies where in a way the problems are easier to resolve. We don't have like as many services. And as you scale, as the bigger you are, and like the variety of services, like you were saying, like you have payments and you have all these services talking to each other, it's so hard to see what is happening. That it's just amazing to see how Flip.AI can accelerate and not accelerate, right? It's like making, it gives you like not only the query, the logs, the simple of the logs, but it gives you like some written cause. Like this is like a very, very, very great product. And the other thing that I was thinking about is like, do you what do you see like customers talking about? Like, are they paying, like, do you have them saying, I have a lot of like logs, or I have a lot of services that go down every X days, and then are you able to measure how much you were able to help them on this acceleration? Like, do you have any measurement or anything that you could share? Like, oh, I had this customer and we were able to help them.
Yeah. So our customers are large. So I won't be able to mention any of our customers by name, but I will tell you that the mean time to resolve, right? So that's the key metric in our industry. So basically, like, how long does it take for you to resolve an incident? Flip, and most of our customers, we cut mean time to resolve by at least 30 to 50%, and that's me being conservative, right? If you look at the time it takes for our models, it took me longer to explain the demo than it did for the model to do the work, right?
Right.
So we really, developers are trying to do the best they can, right? These are people that are incredibly smart, ambitious, and there's a lot of complexity there. And I think to your point, people are working as hard as they can, and there's multiple tools, and there's so much data, right? And there's only more data coming, right? Our goal was, by the time you get a page or an alert, instead of starting off with a question, we want you to start off with the answer, right? And we don't want to just start off with the answer. We want to show you all of our homework on how we got there, so that even if you had to explain it, right? If anyone here has had to ever write a post-mortem, right, on an incident, right, like you can PDF all of our analysis, and just like you can just use that as part of your report, right? So everything here is just really around adding as much value to the developers as possible. Most of the customers that we have are, these are world-class teams that have really great services. They have very, very high performance benchmarks and standards, and they want more out of their systems, right? So yeah, every now and then they'll have their own Sub 1 or Sub 2 incidents like everyone else. But a lot of our work is really around helping them just continue to run and scale their operations efficiently and deliver even better, faster services to their customers.
Awesome. And can we talk a little bit about the model itself that you and the team went and trained in several billions, 34 billion parameters, and you use 100 billion tokens of data. So I made these notes because I'm always interested in like how large the models are. What are some of like the challenges or anything, some lessons learning or like training your own model that I know that it's very hard and it needs a lot of like infrastructure?
Yeah. So we're lucky to have some of the best in the world at what they do here. A lot of our team is early comprehend, right? So, and my co-founder Sunil. If any developers here are familiar with Amazon Deep Racer, so that's like the autonomous car kind of competition that happens every year. Sunil was one of the first people. I think he kind of started that, right, or helped start that and get that off the ground. So I bring that up because a lot of the reinforcement learning techniques that we do are novel and really designed for this use case. It's interesting, when we first started doing this, we were like, hey, the general purpose models are pretty good, but they're not good enough, right? So what do we do? Is it possible for us to train our own model? And we're a startup, right? We haven't raised like hundreds of millions of dollars or anything. Can we build something that's truly enterprise grade? And I think, and I really credit Sunil with a lot of things here. The biggest challenge was finding the right data, right? Like there's data quality, like having quality production grade data that mimics our customers' environments and generating that data at scale enough that's sufficient to train a model is very challenging, right? And that's why, so we launched a paper last year. We shared a little bit about, that's why we built our own chaos training environment, right? So we basically have models in our environment that we've built that build applications that look like our customers. Those models will inject bugs and code bugs and things like the same way a developer would, right? And we use the logs, metrics, and traces coming out of those applications to help us fine tune our models and on the handset or the handful of use cases that we focus on. So truly novel techniques. I don't know if many other, if any, models that are trained for DevOps at this scale, specifically for this use case. And of course, there's like the age-old argument: do you go general purpose model? Do you go small models? Right? Like, will the LLMs or the SLMs, which one will win? Right? Like, there's no, we debate. I hear this debate in the industry all the time. We just care about the customers, right? The customer doesn't care what's under the hood. The customer cares about solving their problem, right? They care like you, right? Like they care about getting to the right answer quickly. And for us to deliver that experience, we had to build our own models. We had to curate our own data. And another challenge is the multimodal piece, right? So logs are this kind of weird natural language. Traces, that's graph data. Metrics, so that's time series. LLMs just traditionally haven't been good at time series data, right? So there are a lot of techniques that we had to do under the hood to stitch this together and get it all to work. And then as I mentioned a little bit, the other thing was another challenge was like, okay, great, now like how do you deploy this, right? One of the things that we were really passionate about, and this kind of goes back to my time in the federal government in the Pentagon, is being able to operate in someone's environment, and completely without any calls to home, if you will. So in other words, can we do everything and make sure that it's containerized enough such that we can ship to a customer's VPC and it could operate autonomously there, right? And still do its job without consuming a bunch of resources, right? So there's a lot that we had to figure out under the hood with respect to packaging it up and making sure that we can actually ship and operate these models in customer environments securely and also efficiently.
Awesome. And we know that Flip.AI has a partnership with Microsoft for Startups. So you are part of one of our programs.
Yep.
And I would love to know a little bit about this partnership. Some people here might not know. Other than the free credits that we offer, there are a lot of other things that we offer. How this partnership helped you, and how long have you been partners with Microsoft?
Yeah, so we've been part of the Pegasus program for about a year now. And yeah, like the program is, there's value from day one. So I think there are a couple things that really excited us. So yeah, we're all startups, we all want credits, right? Like we use it to train our models. That's awesome, right? But I do think that the thing that we were particularly excited about was really the go to market. So we have an opportunity. We had an opportunity to list our list Flip in the Azure Marketplace, which gives us instant access to thousands of Fortune 1000 enterprises and medium to large size enterprises. In other words, like thousands of customers, right, have immediate access to to Flip, right? And I think one of the challenges that we faced was, like we just came out of Stealth about a year ago, and we were fortunate enough to be recognized as a Gartner Cool Vendor. We have some great customer testimonials and some great experience on our belt, but we still have to get the word out, right? We don't have a large sales team. You're looking at it. The founders of the sales team right now. We don't have a marketing team, right? So one of the leverage points we looked for as a startup was, how do we get our name out there, right? How do we get in front of customers? And being listed in Azure Marketplace is a way to do that very easily. A click deeper on go-to-market. I think another thing that's made us really excited is the opportunity to potentially co-sell with Microsoft as well, right? So we have a shared customer list, a shared list of leads that we share between the two of us, right? We think through which deals maybe makes more sense to co-sell on together. Maybe there are certain relationships that we don't have that Microsoft has, or maybe there are certain motions, or maybe there's a sales rep that's already in a cell at a company, and being able to bridge Flip into a conversation, right? So there's definitely that kind of like side-by-side partnership that we're excited to get started on. It's kicking into high gear now, but we know that we'll reap benefits from that. And then last but not least, I do think that I think outside of the the training and the getting the credits and being listed on the marketplace, the other kind of like not so fun part of running a startup is procurement and onboarding, right? It just takes time. It takes time to get an NDA signed. It takes time to get contracts through. It takes time to get things through legal review, et cetera. And it takes time to even just get onboarded at a customer. And we look forward to leveraging a lot of Microsoft's connections and some of the existing processes and existing paper in order to co-sell, right? So those are things that can really expedite and catalyze your journey as a startup. And we've been in the program for about 9 months now. We spent the first couple of months kind of getting things together, getting up getting our posting up, our listing up in the Azure Marketplace, right? We've deployed on Azure at one of our customers since then, so we have a good customer testimonial. We spent time thinking through the customers that we can co-sell against, and 2025 will be the year that we execute hard against that.
That's amazing. Yeah. And other than all the benefits that you mentioned, one of the things that we do, and I definitely do a lot of this, is like giving the startups in our programs the exposure opportunity. So through like this show, or even like in-person events that we host, we have a lot of startups that we invite from the programs to be on stage with us. So it's like showing the world your product to an audience that otherwise you would not reach, right? As a startup, it's so hard to get your word out there, and you don't have like marketing, you don't have funding to do like ads or to reach a broader audience. So that's one of the things that I love doing, is like giving startups the opportunity for them to showcase their product. And then do you have any like success stories or real world impact through, like, again, you don't need to mention companies, but like something that you can share with the audience of like customer success stories?
Yeah, sure. So one of our customers is a very large digital bank, probably one of the top 10 in the world. They have a very heavy microservice environment. They use Datadog and Splunk in their environment. So traces are in Datadog, logs are in Splunk. And yeah, before they came to Flip, a developer would get an alert, and they would open up a channel in Slack, and they would basically query the two systems, right, and try to get to the answer. On average, it took them I think about maybe 15 or 20 minutes on average, on a lot of issues to try to figure out what was basically get to some semblance of an answer. Flip automates that process in about 2 to 3 minutes now. So you could, instead of a developer getting an alert and then having to open up different systems to query them, the developer, Flip gets the alert, right? In the same way, developer with Flip gets the alert, we debug the incident, and we put the analysis in our platform, and we also put it in our Slack channel, right? So like that's, we've had multiple types of incidents, incident severities that we've helped them solve. And this customer also has a lot of kind of like customized open source tooling that they use. right? So we had to train models on that as well. So that's one example. Another example is I'll call a top 10 investment manager. Very similar. Again, I believe once again it's Datadog and Splunk in their environment. And yeah, they we were able to decrease their mean time to resolve incidents by at least 30%, which again, I'm being conservative on that, and it may sound low, but if I can, if you have one of our customers, I believe the cost of downtime for the applications that we're discussing with them is a couple $100,000 a minute. If you can save 30% of that, right, on a regular basis, that adds up pretty quickly. And that's a completely on the one I mentioned, the investment manager, that's completely on premise. So our models are deployed in our VPC. We can't see anything on the outside. So our models are operating autonomously, efficiently, and solving very, very complex incidents and providing the kind of root cause analysis I showed to you in a demo. So most of our customers tend to be those types of, tend to be medium, large size enterprises, and tend to have multiple observability tools in place. And sorry, I can't use any names. They're all very large. Have very.
That's perfect, but
Yeah.
we get a sense of like how complex and how big the problem is.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like a small startup that you are working with. It's like large enterprise, which is, again, it's a very complex system with a lot of like services, and I would say that Datadog is kind of like the one that most of them use, but there's open source, there is other services they use as well, and I'm not from the DevOps side, but I remember working with developers, and they were like, it was a nightmare. Again, it was a nightmare. So we don't, like, I'm a data scientist by training. I started appreciating the DevOps work when things would go down. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I need this person to help with that, and it takes forever. And now with Flip.AI, I would be even more like grateful for having a tool that helps us get up and going again and getting the root cause analysis and so on. And when I was doing my research, Corey, about Flip.AI, I was trying to see if there is any other company doing a similar thing, and I couldn't find. I feel like you are the only one, the main one on this space. So what is next for Flip.AI? Is that like prediction? Is like getting more customers? What do you have on the roadmap coming up this year?
Yeah, great question and great timing. So one of the things we're most excited about is so far most of our technology and deployments has been focused on very large enterprises. Places have a very high bar, right? So if you're selling to a top bank, like your RCAs, your root cause analysis has to be spot on, right? Like it has to be good. So like now that we've gotten a couple of those, many of those wins under our belts, what we're really excited about is actually launching something for individual developers to use. So in the next quarter, this quarter, we'll launch something publicly that developers will have access to try Flip out. So you'll be able to actually try Flip live in your browser. So that's something that's coming. So like everyone on this call will be able to download Flip and try it, and you'll be able to debug incidents and get the kind of access to the kind of intelligence that some of the largest customers and companies in the world have access to. So like we're really excited about democratizing access to our platform. So that's coming in Q1. What else is in the future? For us, we really want to get into prediction and eventually auto healing, like self-healing environments. These are things that have been promised for a long time, right? But we really view it as a journey of trust, right? So the first step is you're not just gonna let models, if you care about your environment, you probably aren't just gonna let models just run your environment on day one, right? Like we thought that it mattered to start with like, where's the fire today? And the fire today is really around, there's an incident, what's the root cause? And we want to make sure that our models and our platform were accurate and can handle the complexity such that we can earn trust with some of the best customers in the world and the broader developer community, right? Like that's the first step, is to getting trust. Now that we have trust, we started in private beta last year, our models, we started experimenting with prediction. So our models can predict incidents. We'll push that out to private beta with customers this year. And then eventually after that, the next step is being able to heal, right? So being able to not only predict an incident or resolve an incident, but being able to go ahead and issue the pull request Right? We've had customers that have requested this feature now, but again, we want to really focus on making sure that we were good at the first things first. And the first thing is like put out the fire, and the fire is the root cause whenever there's an incident. So yeah, that's the roadmap, right? So in Q1, we'll launch something for individual developers that anyone will be able to use and download from the Flip website. Later this year, next another quarter or so, like we'll also start to push out our prediction capabilities into private beta. And then I would say like self-healing is probably something you'll see early 2026 from us.
Awesome. So I'll have to create a system so I can use the individual product in my system that I'm going to create. And I'm excited for this. And if you are watching this, if you have any questions around Flip.AI or things that we are mentioning in this program, please do ask on the chat. We will have a few minutes left. And Corey, so like if anyone is interested, I would say go to the Flip.AI website, take a look. Is the paper also like available there? If people want to know more about the technology itself, so great. So we'll share the link to the paper as well. I'm very interested. I didn't have a chance to read the paper, but as someone that likes the technology behind the products, I will definitely take a look. What else? What are some like final reflections from you? What are you? Okay, I have a question because this is something that I always ask myself. What gets you excited every morning when you wake up? Because probably you have a lot to think about and a lot of problems and a lot of logistics, and you have to wear different hats every day. But like, what is the main motivation when we wake up every morning?
Yeah. So for me, right, my first, I've always wanted to start a company, right? My grandfather was an entrepreneur. My great grandfather was an entrepreneur. So I spent about 20 years of my career just trying to get the right experiences, trying to find the right time and ideas as a team. So for me, like, this is something I've always wanted to do. I feel very lucky to do it. My team is a big motivation for me. I love our folks. I feel very lucky to work with them and my co-founders. And I love customer stuff. I love it. I love, like, as a CEO, there's a lot of administrative things you have to do as a CEO, or you talk to investors and things like that. I love customers. Customers are my thing. Like if you get me into a customer meeting, or if we're trying to scope or figure something out together, or if we're trying to solve a problem, like I absolutely live for those moments.
That's amazing. In any hiring in the future timeline, anything, job openings, people who are looking for jobs?
Yeah. So a couple things, right? So right now we're about 24 folks. We'll go to 3, probably closer to 4 dozen by the end of the year. So we are based mostly in the Bay Area in Bangalore. So especially to folks that are in Bangalore, so we have an office in Bangalore. So to folks so Bangalore's mostly our devs, so mostly developers. I definitely think we're looking for folks that have very kind of strong back-end developer chops, right? Because as you can imagine, there's a lot under the hood here. US is mostly MLE, so machine learning engineering, NLP scientists. We do have some architecture and data as well, right? So yeah, we're always looking for more people. I definitely think we'll continue to grow the dev team out in Bangalore. We will continue to hire for folks that are really deep on the ML side. On the ML side, I think it's interesting. Most of our folks, beyond academic experience, most of our folks have, like, I would say, a lot of experience putting ML into real production applications, right? So like not like innovation projects and things like that. So there's a lot one can learn from those folks if they join Flip. And then this year we'll also we'll build out our customer success function. So we're looking for folks there. And then also, as I mentioned, we don't have sales or marketing at all, right? It's all me today, and with some help from Microsoft as well and a few others. So we'll look to build out those functions as well.
Awesome. So keep an eye on Flip.AI website. More hiring and openings are coming up. And we'll take, I see a question here, a very interesting question from Sheila. Hello, Sheila. What is one of the biggest tech hurdle that you came across when implementing your product? Was it the AI piece or something else?
Yeah, Sheila, yes, it was the AI piece. It's like, we're trying to figure out, like, should we use the general purpose model? Should we build our own? And I think it was like, how do you get this stuff to work, right? Like it's the holy grail for a reason. Like no one's ever been able to do it before. It's like, how do you get models to like how do you get logs, metrics, and traces to play together, these different modalities within the same model framework? And that we go into a lot of detail in that in our paper, but it took us a long time to figure that out.
Cool. Let me see if we have any other question here. Someone was asking how to install Flip.AI, but you just mentioned just go to the website and there is a get started on Flip.AI, and then you were mentioning that.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. So today you can sign up as an enterprise, and we'll get you. But the individual developer offering is going to come later this quarter.
Awesome. Great. So we have 4 minutes left. I want to make sure that, Corey, is there any call to action, anything else that you want to share before I close out this session? And I have a few announcements in the end again.
Yeah. So this is an exciting space, right? And we're the leaders of this new school of Gen AI products focused on observability, right? Without saying, where I think we have some of the best folks here. The enterprise deployments, these are places that have a very high bar. We've deployed on-prem, we've deployed we've got the scars to prove it, right? The one thing I will say, as I zoom away and kind of take off my flip hat, put on my founder hat, to folks that are interested in starting companies, right? I definitely encourage you to find problems that you care about, right? Also find people that you care about to do this with, right? Founding teams, it's like it becomes almost like your family after a time, right? You talk to them a lot, right? Try to find the right partners. And yeah, I do think that Gen AI is going to unlock, is unlocking and basically facilitating an entire shift in the compute cycle. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for those that are interested in building something. And Microsoft's a good partner for that, right? It could be a good partner along that journey. Certainly is.
And I love that you mentioned, the things that you should focus, because sometimes I feel like people are talking too much and thinking too much about the technology, and they don't think about the problem they are trying to solve. So you and your co-founders, you already had a lot of pain points around this issue that no one could solve. So you already had the pain points. You knew that you were going to have customers, and then you came with the technology after that. So it's much easier to go into the market when you have something that it's painful, that you know that you are going to get customers. So amazing, Corey. Very, 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 thank you so much for being in the first show. I can't wait to see what Flip.AI is going to do this year. Very excited. I'll be downloading once the individual products will be released. And I want to thank all the audience here today for the first show. Again, we'll have every other Thursday, we'll have a startup on the show. We have already 5 startups lined up, 5 of them also a part of the Microsoft for Startup programs. And before we close out, let me show my screen again, and I'll talk about the services, the program that we have. Don't forget that we have a bunch of credits, up to 150,000 credits on Azure that you can use. You have more than 30 tools and services that you can use for startup to grow and scale. We have services from Stripe, from different providers that you can use. Also, you can use all the credits toward the latest generative AI model that we have on Azure. And the most important one, I would say, as Corey was saying, it's of course, credits are great, but having the support is one of the best things. Is we can work through the technical and business challenges in free one-on-one sessions with Microsoft experts. And the last thing before we go is don't forget to sign up for the series every other Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific time. I'll be chatting with a startup founder, an AI startup founder, talking about the product, customer stories, live demo, and so on. If you have any feedback, feel free to reach out, and I hope to see you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thanks to our speakers. Our session is a part of a series. To register for future shows and watch past episodes on demand, you can follow that link on the screen or in the chat. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find that link on the screen or in the chat. Today's event code is 2 4485, and we will see you at the next one.